Thank you very much for the opportunity. There's been this buzzword that's been going around in the business community called AfCFTA, free trade, but it's such a daunting process if you think about it for some companies that's coming from a very small business community and a small population of Namibia. Obviously we will be benefiting a lot from getting access to the 1.3 trillion market which is available in Africa. So and this is where the whole process of this workshop has been a benefit. Yes, it sounds daunting. We do not necessarily understand. We understand the Namibian market, we understand what the local requirements are, but we don't always understand what is going to be the requirement if you go to another African country, how you go about the process. And what this workshop did was look at to simplify the process for your bigger corporate company, but also for your very small entrepreneur to have the opportunity to start benefiting from this AfCFTA agreement. It gives you a guide of where do you start, who you have to see. Yes, it will be different for different products, but at least you've got the opportunity now to start somewhere. And that has been the emphasis that's been going through from this workshop. Another element that I found that was quite beneficial, there was a lot of government entities that was also involved in the workshop, and they got a very good understanding of how their participation in the flow to get this the process successful. So that was definitely a benefit for that they were there as well. So all in all, a very good workshop. I think we will all benefit from it. And yes, now we've got the step-by-step guide, and now it's just to get action and make sure that public and private sectors generate a value chain so that the Namibian people can also start benefiting from trading within Africa.
It has been a wonderful 2 days of validating the guide that we call the step-by-step guide for trading goods under the AfCFTA, particularly for Namibia. As somebody who actually worked on the guide, it was quite interesting to get a bit of a 360 degree of how trade is facilitated within the AfCFTA. Of course, we know that when it comes to the trade agreement itself, the AfCFTA trade agreement, Namibia also has the strategy of implementing the AfCFTA. Those are technical documents, policy documents, and when it comes to the step-by-step guide of trading under the AfCFTA, developed specifically for the private sector, and particularly for women and youth owned enterprises, is basically to provide a practical guidance for the traders to go through a process flow system on what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and basically connecting different institutions that are involved in trade facilitation, because sometimes these institutions only look at what they offer at the point, and the trader needs to move from one institution to another institution in a process that sometimes can be costly, sometimes can be lengthy, and sometimes it actually results in traders maybe giving up in terms of whether they want to import or export. So this guide, it's supposed to address this specific challenge, to empower traders with practical information on how Namibian businesses can operationalize the AfCFTA agreement. The guide is very simple. We try to sort of reduce the jargon, technical international trade language into a simplified language for a trader, however also upholding, obviously the content of what the agreement means. So it was a pleasure to help the Namibian government and to also work with the EAC to actually put together this document for the private sector. And we hope that Namibia can move beyond 2 companies exporting under the AfCFTA, but also not just exporting, but also importing, because of course the agreement provides that Africa trade with each other, and it's also an opportunity for Africa to source input into their industrial and also to export final goods to each other, to increase our intra-Africa trade, which is perceived to be obviously one of the lowest in the world. So it was very much of a pleasure, and I think key takeaway is that as a government of Namibia, I think with the support of the EAC now with the guide, I think the government needs to now also try to come up with capacity building programs to actually give training to private sector on the guide. It's not just about getting the guide and reading the step by step, but I think there's a lot of issues that need training on. Rules of origin needs training on. We need to train them on to understand exactly what are the benefits of the guide, of the agreement itself, and how to claim those benefits. I think there's more to do, and I think this is a first step that can contribute to the whole overall trade facilitation agenda of the AfCFTA. Thank you very much.
So we've come to the end of the workshop on the validation of the Namibia step-by-step guide for trading in goods under the African Continental Free Trade Area. This has been a very exciting workshop where we had the private sector, we had institutions such as the Namibia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Ministry of International Relations and Trade, NAMRA, Namibia Revenue Authority. So almost all the agencies that are important for trade were here, and the validation actually benefited from their input. So what's next now is to just finalize, consolidate all the inputs that came from the participants, but also to send to some of the agencies that were not represented here. So some key takeaways, there's a lot of enthusiasm among the Namibian business community to trade under the AfCFTA. To have a business person leaving their business to come here for 1.5 days, it means a lot because it shows commitment. So on our side as ECA, we are very happy to have partnered with the government and NCCI to develop this platform. This morning we had our colleagues from Addis who were presenting on the trade portal for Namibia, where we have actually linked this guide to the portal. This should be a live document. As you recall that it covers trade in goods, but we know the African Continental Free Trade Area also covers trade and services. So it needs to be updated to include that aspect. But also we emphasize the use of this portal as well as the guide. And we believe that the ministry will be distributing this not only to businesses around Windhoek, but also to businesses that are outside the city. Thank you.
The discussions allowed us to confirm the accuracy and regulatory and procedural requirements, identify gaps, clarify processes, and ensure that the guide is practical, user-friendly, and responsive to the needs of its primary end users. We have also achieved a shared understanding of the end-to-end trading process under the AfCFTA, strengthened institutional coordination, and enhanced stakeholder familiarity with the trade information portal. Most importantly, the workshop has fostered a strong sense of ownership among stakeholders, which will be critical for the effective use and sustainability of these instruments. Ladies and gentlemen, the next phase will focus on the consolidation and the refinement of all inputs, comments, and recommendations generated during the validation process. In order to produce a final validated step-by-step guide, the Ministry of International Relations and Trade will continue to play its coordinating role, working closely with the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, the Namibian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and all relevant national institutions to ensure the timely finalization, approval, and dissemination of the guide. Once finalized, attention will shift to broad dissemination, targeted capacity building initiatives, and ensuring that the step-by-step guide and the trade information portal are actively utilized by the private sector.